Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, and we are going to specifically talk about physical platforms for tangible campaign construction for Dungeons and Dragons. So Dungeons and Dragons is transitioning into this new type of campaign start, right? So previously in old days, you'd pen and a pad, you would do intangible campaign composition. You just write down your ideas on a piece of paper, and that was that, right? But those days are ending, and they're ending quickly. So right now, what we're moving into is kind of a new phase, in my humble opinion, of Dungeons and Dragons, which is tangible campaign construction. So a dungeon master has multiple options to start a campaign with. So, what are the other options compared to a pen and a pad, intangible campaign composition? What do you use for tangible campaign construction? Well, you use the first one of these was Magic the Gathering. You literally constructed a physical story deck, right? And the way you would do this is, you're sitting down to write your Dungeons and Dragons game, right? And so what do? Well, you go get your Strixhaven, you get your Magic the Gathering Strixhaven cards, you get your Magic the Gathering Ravnica cards, and you get your Magic the Gathering Theros cards, right? And you stack up all the non-player characters, which are literally just characters that are defined on cards in those Dungeons and Dragons worlds. Every single one of them officially canon Dungeons and Dragons because they made canon D&D canon hardbacks, right? And then you put in and then you get dual lands for your locations, and you get monsters straight from your cards, and then you're like, wait, hey, I have my story deck. Wow, hey, they just made a Warhammer 40K. Whoop! I'll clock that right into my Dungeons and Dragons story deck. I'm physically constructing my story deck, right? And you construct your story deck, and then you run it, right? And that was the first, okay? Next, Lego, huge, right? D&D Click, Lego Click, they are officially connected now, and you can quite literally set up your Lego 48 by 48 gray base plate, put all your D&D minifigs on there, build your D&D terrain, and walk them right over to your Lego Scooby-Doo set, right? And Velma has to decide, is she going to go to Candlekeep or is she going to go to Strixhaven? Because she's going to be reading some D&D books, right? Physical campaign construction. There are two other physical platforms that I've talked about previously, and those are Funko Pop and Yahtzee. Well, today there's another. Today there is another, and you're like, well, wait, wasn't it already there, Scott? No, it was not, right? So here's the thing. I've been saying this for a long time. Nobody knows what Dungeons and Dragons is in this world but me. And I'm very convinced of this and I was saying it because I'm like, y'all don't understand what Gary Gygax did. You have no idea what, the stakes he drove into the ground, right? And you have no idea the tent of human progression that is going to be held up by those stakes, right? And what's at stake here is narrative, human narrative. I'm convinced that Dungeons and Dragons is the future of human narrative. It will completely define how we tell stories. In the old days, an author just write this little story down. It's just the ideas in my head. That's nice. That's cute. It's 2022. Wake up. Fortnite is here, right? 1,000 characters that have no logical connection to each other, but that connection is being worked out. So right now, Fortnite has built exactly what Dungeons and Dragons has built, this huge intellectual property expansion project, right? And they went over and they're like, we don't know how all this stuff connects. Marvel, can you help us? And Marvel is helping them connect that world narratively together to explain to you exactly how Batman and Spider-Man and Naomi Osaka are all in the same world, right? Now, where is that help coming for Dungeons and Dragons? From Dungeon Masters. We connect these so Wizards of the Coast, actually Hasbro, connects Dungeons and Dragons to multiple world intellectual properties, and we as the Dungeon Master accept the invitation to connect these worlds and build stories in them. Right? That's the way it works. That's what's happening. Okay. So today, now that's what's happening, right? But I'm convinced the suits at the company don't understand what's actually happening, right? And the question here is, what's in the box? What are you getting when you buy the Dungeons and Dragons Essentials kit? I'm going to tell you what I think you're getting. I think you're getting the most valuable key that was ever crafted. I think you're getting a key to a key that gives you permission, in my humble opinion, to tell stories in 1,000 worlds. And I'll tell you right now, no executive suit ever intended to sell you that key, but they put it in the box. They put it in the box. And the question is, are you smart enough to understand that the key's in your hand? And are you smart enough to use it to open the doors that you can open with it? Right? Not just smart enough, but do you have the courage? Right? Because the reality is, a lot of people are like, wait, Scott, you're saying that Spider-Man and Velma and Naomi Osaka are all in Dungeons & Dragons? Yes, I am. I'm saying that's exactly the case. And you're like, well, Scott, isn't that highly problematic? Wouldn't that be incredibly challenging to make a cohesive story out of that? Yes. You'd have to be one of the most charismatic, confident, intelligent people in the world. Which, guess what? That's what Dungeons & Dragons is a filter for. So this is the question. What's in the box? Right? And I'm giving you my humble opinion on what's in the box. Right? And I think the U.S. Supreme Court is going to give you their humble opinion in 20 years. And until that happens, we need to build the foundation for what that law will be written as. Right? Because if we don't use it, and then they come, they'll say, well, maybe this key was put in the box, but nobody used it. But if we use the key that we were given, right, when the law is made, they'll say, yes, this key's been used for 20 years. Yes, the key use is valid, right? So, all right, I'm the only person in the world talking about physical platforms for Dungeons & Dragons, right? And I think I'm the only person in the world actually running these Dungeons & Dragons campaigns with intellectual property mixes at the level. There's certainly been crossovers, right? Actually, I think I'm the only person who's saying I'm doing this because, in my humble opinion, I've been permissioned to do it, right? Like, at my kitchen table, right? So, and that's another thing is, I will say right now, I don't think anybody in the world has any right to stream any of these, right? Like, and the reason why is Gary didn't intend that, right? He intended you to mix worlds from, like, world mixing was coming from like 1983. D&D, they were connecting D&D to IRL Earth as early as 1983, right? So intellectual property expansion and connecting IRL people into fantasy fiction stories was starting as early as 1983, right? So I'm saying right now, in my humble opinion, there is a fifth physical platform, and it is huge, right? It's actually small and niche, but the ramifications of it are huge. It is Kid Robot, okay? So Kid Robot is a company, and you should go check them out, right? And they are a art curation company. They have a collection of artists, and when you hire and when you collaborate with Kid Robot, they're saying you are getting the Kid Robot. In my humble opinion, they're saying you get the Kid Robot aesthetic, okay? And they list all their collabs. One of their official collabs is D&D. It is my humble opinion that the moment they made an official, and I'm not like, this isn't some, like, okay, Mega Bloks made a dragons set, right? Like, Mega Bloks I think they made a red, white, and blue, green, black set of dragons. Don't matter. Like, it's not official Dungeons & Dragons. But Kid Robot has official fat, red, ampersand, D, fat, red, ampersand, D, right? D&D, baby, right? The moment they made an official D&D product, they created it with their specific aesthetic. They said, hey, all these other companies that we've officially connected with this official Kid Robot aesthetic, these are connected, right? And you can literally put the physical merch that we built right next to the physical merch that we built, right? And get this, when you create physical merch of characters in D&D, that's not like any other product, because there's a long-standing tradition that if you make a physical merch product of a character, it's going to get used as a miniature, which is a functioning portion of Dungeons and Dragons. Now, what does Kid Robot connect Dungeons and Dragons to? Literally 35 different worlds, okay? I'm just going to tell you one today. Naruto Shippuden. That's right. So, in my humble opinion, you are being given an invitation by Kid Robot, and you are being given an invitation by Dungeons and Dragons to put supernatural ninjas who use chakra to perform jutsus in your Dungeons and Dragons game. And it's not a homebrew. It's not you just running off with a weird idea, right? They're saying, when you think of Kid Robot, think of Dungeons and Dragons. When you're thinking about Dungeons and Dragons, think of Kid Robot. These worlds are connected. That's why they're the same scale. That's why they're in the same aesthetic. That's why they're in, that's why they're that's why these are miniatures, right? Like, we're taking this merch that used to look like XYZ, but now it's a miniature. Because when you put a physical product next to Dungeons and Dragons, which has told the whole world, the rules aren't in charge, you're in charge, all right? What's in the box? What did you companies think D&D did? It's used to tell stories. And get this, I don't have no mercy for any of the companies involved, because there were people who understood this. This is why J.K. Rowling never allowed Harry Potter to be turned into a tabletop role-playing game, because she is incredibly jealous of her world. She's like, ain't nobody telling stories up in this world but me, right? And so she said, there were easily 100 requests. People saying, we're begging you, please let us make a Harry Potter role-playing game. And she's like, you can go kick rocks. I ain't allowing that. Because she knew Dungeons and Dragons is a storytelling engine. She knew any world connected to it was inviting stories for people to jump in and tell their own stories in her world. She is incredible. She's a guard of her world. She's like, no. We ain't doing none of this Star Wars nonsense with 200 authors. Harry Potter is me, right? And that's why she did. And these companies, Gary Gygax created something nobody understood. Changed human narrative forever, right? And then Hasbro put a turbo rocket on a thing they didn't understand. They bought it, but they didn't understand it, right? And now, I think what's in the box of the Essentials Kit is the most powerful key in the world. It is the only key ever printed that allows 1,000 worlds to be combined in an almost infinite number of connections with physical product, scaled, designed to be used as miniatures. Never intended, but that's where we are. The momentum of capitalism has pushed Dungeons and Dragons into an intellectual property expansion place that has never been achieved on any product in the world. That is my humble opinion. I'm eager to hear yours. Let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.